Hey, it's Jessica DeMassa with WTF Health. What's the future of health? I am talking to the who's who of health tech and healthcare innovation. And today I've got some good friends from Salesforce here to talk through all of the exciting things that I learned about Salesforce and their business at Dreamforce 2022, which was a couple of weeks ago. So at Dreamforce, for those of you who didn't see my coverage, there was a lot of new product features launched, namely this product called Healthcare 360, which brings in real-time data, lets Salesforce do virtual care straight from their application, health scoring, what else? Longitudinal patient record, like all sorts of really exciting stuff. And so we are going to unpack that, as well as some of the healthcare thought leadership that's happening at Salesforce to help move the needle in terms of health equity and healthcare consumerism. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our guests. We have Dr. Geeta Nayyar. She is the Senior Vice President and Chief Medical Officer for Salesforce. And also joining us, we have Amit Khanna. He's Senior Vice President and General Manager of Life Sciences and Health at Salesforce. So thanks, you guys, for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Jess. Thanks so much.
So happy to have you here. I'm like dying to talk to you more about this, specifically around all of the thinking that needs to kind of shift for us to really start to embrace this consumerism and healthcare idea. And then the way that you guys are helping advance this using Salesforce expertise as a CRM. So the thing that struck me the most at Dreamforce right off the bat is this whole concept that we need to start as healthcare rethinking the relationship between the EHR and the CRM, and that this is an and both thing, not an either or, and that the EHR should be for, keeping track and knowing the patient, but the CRM is for knowing the customer. So I can't wait to dive into this. But before we get into the specifics, Geeta, Dr. G, I'm hoping that you can just start us off by talking about high level, some of the thinking around healthcare consumerism that Salesforce is operating under the premise of. So, what does healthcare consumer mean to Salesforce?
Well, first of all, Jess, thanks so much for having me, and thank you for your excitement. Your passion is very contagious. I can feel it through the Zoom. So thank you for that, and for letting us host you at Dreamforce. In a nutshell, we have seen the acceleration of digital transformation primarily because of the pandemic. So we feel that CRM is here to stay, and it couldn't be more relevant, right? If you look at where the consumer is, which is in their home, in their car, in their office, and in the doctor's office, it's about the complement of CRM with EHR. And I say the future is bricks and clicks, right? You still need that brick and mortar hospital system, just like you need that EHR. Baby's got to be born, surgery's got to be done. But you also need those clicks. You need the ability to meet your consumer where they're at, wherever that might be. And we are living in an age where the consumer is in charge. They are interested in their health, number one, but they're also in charge of it. And if you as a provider, pharma company, payer are not able to provide these efficiencies, they're going to go somewhere else. And that somewhere else might be the retailer down the street. So the digital transformation is here to stay as the number one CRM on the planet. We've done it before in travel, hospitality, manufacturing, finance, you name it, we've done it. And we're doing it in healthcare. And we see that as the future of health tech.
That's awesome. I love that. And I loved seeing all the different industries represented at Dreamforce. That was really cool because I felt like I could learn a lot, even just seeing the way other industries are integrating your technology. So I'm going to chime in here because this whole idea of EHR and CRM, this is kind of like the big thought paradigm shift that I think we need to start to, really embrace in healthcare. But why is now the right time for this conversation? Because I feel like this whole concept of healthcare consumerism, not new. This has been around for a while. CRM has been around for a while, but why is now the time to start rethinking the relationship between the EHR and the CRM?
Yeah, I think I'll say a couple of things. Why is the right time is because as you look at we as consumers, as I mentioned in our previous conversation, we should talk about as consumers, not patients. Our expectations have been coming and changing a lot. Whether we want care anywhere, whether we want the care in the retail side of the house, whether we want care at home. So now if you look at it, that relationship with the doctor is changing. It is coming across every time, every channel, it's omni-channel. So that's where the CRM part comes in. If you look at EHRs, they have in the space, but they are more transactional. But health is not transactional. So we have realized over this last few years as how we look at it, it's longitudinal, It is outside the hospital system. It is at retail clinic. It is home. So that's where CRM comes into play, because you need to know the consumer, not when they come to you, but also when they're outside of your hospital. How do you connect that information? How do you know them? That's why it's critical timing for us to start thinking of these two together as bringing the right, let's say, right health outcomes for us as consumers.
All right, Emma, I'm sticking with you because I want to dive into some of the sexy things that I mentioned at the top of the interview that came out with the Healthcare 360 product launch. And so this is, this whole idea of integrating real-time data, but there were a lot of other things that came out with this, some really sexy product features, like I said. So, I mean, some of the integrations with Slack, with MuleSoft, the whole idea of a longitudinal patient record, the health scoring. So I'm hoping that you can keep going, because I know there was a lot more than that. Hit us with the highlights of Healthcare 360. And then my question too is, if you can speak to it, it seems like a lot of these features are much more care forward than I had anticipated seeing coming from a company like Salesforce, coming from a CRM. So what really prompted the decision to move in this more care forward direction with some of these features?
Yeah, great questions, Jessica. So one thing I'll say is that from our perspective, when we look at some of the key things that we announced at Dreamforce, it goes back to our overall strategy, as we call it, as holistic care, whether it's at home, outside hospital, knowing the patient, knowing the consumer. With that thought, if we apply what innovations we have come to, for example, you talked about risk scoring. It's not about risk scoring as a clinical risk scoring. For us, the idea is, again, the holistic care, which means, can I understand the social aspect? Can I understand the demographic aspect? Can I understand the financial? And then marry that information with the clinical data so that now I can understand, to the point that I'll take a specific example. Bay Area had 2 years ago a lot of fires and there was a lot of smoke. Can you predict that from an environmental factor and reach out to a consumer who is like 8-year-old kid who has asthma problems? Before that hits, can you understand and act? That's the CRM part. That's bringing clinical knowledge. That's bringing environmental knowledge, scoring that and reaching out. So that's our thesis around it. How can we be more preventive and bring these data sets together in real time to act on it? Now, if you take the same thesis, we applied virtual care. You asked about, and you mentioned about virtual care. We brought virtual care with the same thinking. Care is delivered in multiple channels, whether it's at home, it's outside home, virtually. And also, when we look at virtual care, it's not just about the doctor. There are a lot of areas, tertiary part of healthcare, that needs video channel. An example could be care manager reaching out to a chronic disease consumer who needs to be connected, or a pharmacist in a health plan who is doing medication therapy management needs to reach out to. Or if you go outside US, for example, there are a lot of places where you end up with. So this thinking around how can I engage with the consumer across all channels brought us to this idea of scoring, virtual care. And then also we talked about at Dreamforce as not just focus on traditional therapies, but as we look at more non-conventional therapies like cell and gene therapy platform, we also launched that. Bringing all these together makes us, let's say, forward thinking, and we think so. But hopefully we can also bring our customers along that journey.
All right, Dr. G, I want to kind of pick your brain on this, specifically on the virtual care side of things, because that was, I think, of all the things I saw, the thing that surprised me the most is like Salesforce virtual care. Wait a minute, what? So I'm hoping that maybe you can give us a little bit of an insight on the why behind this move into virtual care.
Sure. So first of all, I mean, look at how we're doing this Zoom, right? This has become the way that we see patients. And CRM is the natural extension in which to do virtual care. We believe virtual care is here to stay. We believe the paradigm of healthcare and delivery has really shifted, as I said, the bricks and clicks. And who better than Salesforce to be positioned to own that patient relationship, manage it, but be able to do it the way that the patient wants it and also the provider wants it, right? We talk a lot about patient relationship, patient engagement, but the truth is, when you do physician engagement correctly, you're then doing patient engagement correctly. And the reality of so much of the workforce as we've gone through this physician burnout, physician shortage, all of this continues, we are able to offer better access to care by having the virtual option, because many providers need to have that. Many providers need to have that, or they're forced to actually deliver less services. And so we see this as the future of the physician workforce, the care team workforce. And we see this as a partnership to opening up access for patients the way that they want to. Again, the promise of virtual care, it's not a silver bullet. There are things that have to be done in a hospital, like delivering babies, having surgeries. You heard me say it earlier. But the truth is, so much of medicine can be done virtually. And we've seen that because of the pandemic. We do have to be mindful. I sit on the board for the American Telemedicine Association. We do have to be mindful that this is all in lockstep with regulation. Because these regulations opened up during the pandemic, we were able to unleash the power of virtual medicine. Our hypothesis is that it is here to stay, that will get pulled back, reimbursement and regulation pending. But again, this is the future. There's really no question about it. And more care in the home, we know for a fact, brings down costs, improves quality. And I'll just give you a quick anecdote. I mean, patients that I saw during the pandemic, being able to see their home, being able for them to show me. I still remember one patient, she said, when I take this step up my stairs, this is what happens. And there was a question in my mind over which joint it was, the knee or the hip. And it was so clear it was her hip because I saw her home environment. And there are umpteen examples of like that in every specialty. So inviting your provider into your home can also make a difference in your diagnosis as well as your treatment.
I love that. I think health in the home is definitely where we're headed in the future. Amit, I want to come back to you and have you fill in some of the product questions about the virtual care piece, because, as I'm sitting there and I'm watching, the demo of this at Dreamforce, I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, so wait a minute. Does Salesforce have its own doctors now? Or is this just a platform that you're providing to your customers, the providers, the plans, the life sciences companies, pharma, in order to enable them to provide virtual care? So clear that up for me, and then maybe tell me a little bit more about the virtual care offering.
Yeah, so we are just, as you said, offering the platform to our customers. We don't have clinicians. I mean, we have clinicians, Dr. G, like Dr. G, who are advisors, chief medical officer, but we don't have practicing. We don't offer as like teledocs or other vendors on the market that you see probably have. So we don't have that, but we are providing the platform. And under the platform, I think there are a couple of important points from a product perspective that we thought are important. One is this idea is not about just video. Video, if you look at it, is a commodity in that sense. But the idea that video is embedded in the patient 360. You can see all the timeline. You can see the medication. You can see their household members. You can see their care plans. All that embedded in that console was our fundamental thesis to bring these together. So that was one. Second for us is an important aspect is multi-party participants. So can I bring, if I'm a son or daughter, can I sit in the same conversation with my dad, with the mom, with the doctor? So that multi-participant is important. Same thing is on the other side. Can a doctor invite somebody in the conversation directly? Hey, I want a nutritionist to be in this call with the patient. So this idea of multi-participant is important. Third for us is focus on this idea of health equity. So we have option of closed captioning. We all know that is available, but also we want to make sure that it's not just a video. You can also call the doctors with the same. So there is a number that you can call, so that in areas where the bandwidth and the broadband is not there enough, you can still do that. And so you're not at a disadvantage. And lastly, we offer this capability, as you rightly mentioned at the beginning, not just in the provider sector, but it's more about provider, life sciences and patient services program, health plans for doing medication therapy management, care coordinators. All these areas we are looking at, and that's where we come. And it is our partnership with AWS that we bring the video stream. So we embed it together. And for our customers, it is all tied together. They don't have to do anything when they open the box. It is up and working.
That's so impressive. All right, I have to ask you one more question, Amit, about the product launch, the health scoring. I want to double click on this too, to get into some of the weeds with you. So for those who are not aware of like exactly what this looks like, who may not have seen the demo and didn't have the lucky privilege to attend Dreamforce like I did, explain what the health scoring is in more detail and tell me like, everything about it. What contributes to a health score? What data are you pulling in? Because real-time data integration was central to this. So what data is coming in? How do we arrive at a score? Who is meant to look at the score? A nurse, a doctor? I mean, who? How are they meant to use it? And how real-time is the real-time data that's contributing to the score? So tell us everything about it.
Makes sense. So I think a lot of good questions. So I'll start with what is fundamentally the product idea, go into a little bit of details, how it works, and then why and who are the users basically we are thinking about. So fundamentally, the idea started with, as I rightly in the beginning of the call said, that marrying clinical and non-clinical data. So that's first fundamental thing. We had a lot of data coming, social, demographic, economic. Then we say we marry this, and by different providers, payers, health plans, they might have different form of understanding that population or even drawing weightage on that population. So you might say, okay, I want to build my own algorithm. So the idea is that you're collecting the data, we are giving the toolkit, and our provider, payer, customers are bringing their own models on top. So they are marrying this data. It could be a device data, it could be environmental, clinical data, and then creating a score. Score could be, think of it as a population health score we have talked about, but here we are marrying all of it, bringing and calculating that score. So to answer first question, real time, it is completely depending on the data source you're feeding. If you feed every 1 minute, you will calculate it every minute. There's nothing preventing us from that. What is important for us is we take that score, and that's where the power of CRM comes into play, because there are a lot of companies that we have seen in health who have done scoring. That's one part of population health is typically there. But we take the score and publish it in the transactional side, which means when you open up a patient's record, you see their score and their trends over a period of time. And not only that, we have defined rules by which you can say if a score in environmental category, in the clinical score, in the social falls by 10%, automatically do X. So that ability to have the score, publish it in real time, and act on it is important, and that's automated. And finally, if you can look at it with our toolkit on Marketing Cloud, we say you can also automate saying, okay, if a score falls or goes up by a certain point, put them on a certain journey. Think of it, now you know that the patient is diabetic, has 2 chronic conditions, their adherence score, they missed last 2 appointments, fell by 5%. I want to put a task out for the care manager to call them or to put them on a journey, which means every week somebody will call him or her. That's the power we are trying to bring together. It's not just the score. Scoring, segmentation, and actionability is the key part of it. And the last question you asked is about who are the users. So we look at the users in the care management side of the house, most of the time in the health plan side, both on commercial and Medicare Advantage side. Providers who are at risk, which means, and this is not at risk, providers who take risk basically for the population. So they are not so that's one thing. So those are the areas. And finally, on the clinical trial side, we saw a lot of pharma companies interested in that because they want to see at the population level what the scoring is, bring those data points, and then act on it. So that's where we look at these use cases also.
That's incredible. I think that just it's the ability to bring in that level of data and then make it actionable, I think is really game changing as far as, our ability to really make an impact on patient outcomes. So Dr. G, I want to ask you, because I think underpinning like some of these examples that Amit gave us in this conversation about health scoring, and definitely in that conversation about virtual care, is this whole idea of health equity, which was a central theme at Dreamforce. It was actually the theme of the keynote for the Health and Life Sciences group. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the higher level thinking that's going on at Salesforce about health equity, and how you really feel that you guys can make a big difference in terms of moving the needle and improving access to care and improving outcomes for all.
Sure. So first, I won't pretend that we have all the answers. Health equity is perhaps one of the biggest issues of our generation, and we saw that again play out during the pandemic. But we remain very interested in taking a leadership position on that, and we have done several things in that regard. Number one, the investments we're making in virtual care speak for themselves. Virtual care, without a doubt, improves access, not to everyone, but improves access across the board to folks who don't have it. Sometimes in rural areas, sometimes even in big cities where transportation is an issue. Part of the scoring Amit mentioned is basically social determinants of health, right? So there's a recognition that there are barriers related to socioeconomic status that hinder people. Number two, we're living in an era of misinformation and disinformation. Again, we saw this play out during the pandemic. Not that it's new to healthcare. If you come from the South Asian community like I do, everything can be cured with ginger and garlic, right? So being able to activate CRM technology, specifically Marketing Cloud, not marketing, but it's really patient education, right? Scaling that patient-doctor relationship is a big part of what we do with our technology. And so being able to empower that with the facts and the knowledge and the trust that is really needed in healthcare now more than ever, and that we know primarily affect Black and Brown communities in particular, we find continue to be important. Lastly, we've made investments in this space. I sit on the board personally for Same Sky Health, which is one of our investments by Salesforce Ventures. They're fantastic. Abner Mason, their CEO, their whole business model, their entire product suite is dedicated to health equity and how to reach those populations. So we've also put our money where our mouth is in that regard, and certainly in our own hiring practices as a company, as an organization, we continue to invest in that space. So we are very serious about being part of the solution. I wish we were the silver bullet, but it will certainly take much more than technology to solve the health equity issue. But we believe we're making strides, and we continue to keep it as a focus for us as a business.
That's fantastic. And I'm chime in here because I know that there are some ways that you're even helping enable your clients to make inroads on health equity. And so to Dr. G's point, I mean, you guys may not be able to solve it yourselves with a magic silver bullet of technology, but the more broadly the technology can be made available to others in healthcare to help tackle this, it really empowers everybody to make a difference. So share with us maybe some examples of how Salesforce clients are starting to look at using your tech to help improve health equity.
Yeah, so I think more the step that as we build product, and I'll give an example, we also go through our internal team of ethical and team that makes sure that we are not putting out any biases in our algorithm, and making sure that we are bringing out products that do address some of the health inequalities. An example I'll say is that a big problem in healthcare is missed appointments, or no-shows, as we call them. That's both a problem for better health outcome and a problem on the provider offices. So when we brought out our no-show, which is predicting the idea that when a consumer is trying to book an appointment, we tell them, even though 8 a.m. is available, we end up giving them only the 10 a.m. slot, because from our prediction, we think that will be better, and they will be better with a 10 a.m. and not do a 8 a.m. And when we first went to our ethical team and we presented our algorithm, they said, you have an inherent bias in this one. This algorithm is not right. It will put more inequality. So then we went through that process. We removed certain parameters in the algorithm. We made sure there's no inherent bias or inequality. So that's one example of we consciously do it. Same thing with virtual care. When we started, we said, okay, we have to make sure that not everybody might have the greatest broadband. We should allow them to have directly dial in. So things like that are automatically built in, and have the idea that every team member starts thinking about this when they build the product.
All right, you guys, let's wrap up this conversation by talking about buzzwords. I love buzzwords, and I kept track of some that I heard at Dreamforce, because it was like, just after so many days of sitting in these sessions, it's like you start to hear words over and over again, and they start to bubble up in my mind. And so I'm going to ask each of you about a buzzword that I wanted to get a little bit more input and explanation around, just because they seem like they might be indicative of trends that really shape the healthcare and life sciences industry moving forward. So Amit, I want to start with you. Over and over again, I kept hearing self-service at scale. So what exactly does that mean? And if it means what I hope it means, when can we start to see this like unfold in a big way in healthcare? What do you think?
Yeah, so I'll give you two examples, and one of them is live in our healthcare product. Can you book an appointment with your wealth advisor and your home mortgage person online? Self-service. Yes. Can you book an appointment with the doctor? No. But we can. With our product, we launched 6 months ago. It's self-service. I can go find the slot. It will automatically provide connecting to an EMR, as we normally said that we have to stand up both parallelly. So real time, connect with EMR, find the right slot, and I can book an appointment. And I can submit my assessment. So I don't have to be with paper when I come into the office. So this idea of self-service, making an appointment at scale, avoids the cost in the system, and also has a better outcome, because I can book it. I don't have to be on the call for half an hour. So that's one example. Second example is from a provider-payer interaction, prior auth approval. So we all know that prior auth faxes, calls, we are looking at in that idea that can we have a real-time connection between a health plan and a provider? So as soon as you see it, you can submit. You don't have to wait. You are submitting from the provider. A real-time answer comes back to you within Health Cloud saying you don't need a prior auth, or you are missing this document. So make it all so seamless that the machine can do it. You have self-service, and remove the cost so that we can have more time with the patient ultimately.
All right, Dr. G, Amit cheated a little bit. The other one I wanted to talk about was seamless experiences, because I feel like I heard that over. Look, it's like baked into the rhetoric. even part of Amit's answer. So, I mean, tell me, Dr. G, from the high level Salesforce, what does seamless experiences mean? And if you can, like, bring us full circle and connect it to the idea of healthcare consumer that we started this whole conversation out with. I mean, I think that we all want the friction to be removed, but I think positioning it as seamless is slightly different. So tell us what Salesforce means by that, and when we as healthcare consumers can start to perhaps enjoy some of those seamless experiences from our payers and providers and the pharma companies that we all are engaged with.
So it really goes back to everything that we've talked about, right? How does the front end complement with what's happening in the back end? The back end primarily being the EHR. So a lot of what Amit described, very similar to what you might experience with your airline, right? That you're able to check in, you're able to acknowledge who you are, perhaps answer some questions, even get some information like we talked about. Hey, don't bring batteries. Hey, don't bring guns aboard, right? There's all kinds of things that happen in healthcare that often is the opposite of seamless, right? When you go to your average doctor's office today, you're still given that clipboard, right? And you're asked the same 4 or 5 things that you filled out last time, or you filled out before, but somehow never made it into the back end. So we're cutting that out, right? We're saying, look, a lot of this can be done do it yourself, and a lot of it can be automated. And let's ask the things, let's leave the time for the things that don't require automation or should not be automated, like the hi, how are you, the chief complaint, et cetera. And same for the discharge process, right? So much of the compliance issues that we see in healthcare are related to not picking up a prescription, not knowing that you were supposed to schedule an appointment. So a lot of what Amit is talking about is taking those pieces, which are the most filled with friction, and often it's the check-in and the check-out. Those are really the points of care where we can offer a lot more value, and in addition to all the things that we're doing to complement the EHR. But the idea is take out the friction and really leave the consumer available to do what they need to do to confirm their data, edit their data, and also send it back to the doctor in real time so they can actually action it and make better diagnosis and treatments.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, this is so exciting. I love hearing the picture of the future of health and life sciences as painted by Salesforce, because I do think you have such a tech forward and, more importantly, customer forward approach than we do right now in healthcare, broadly speaking. But I think we're working on it. And so it's great to hear, how you guys are thinking about it and some of the strategy and definitely the product features that are coming together to help advance this idea moving forward in health. So thank you both so much, Dr. G. I really appreciate you stopping by to chat with me.
Thanks for having us, Jess.
No problem. All right. To find more interviews with the who's who of health tech as they are changing the way that we do healthcare, head on over to my YouTube channel. It is youtube.com/WTF Health. Thanks again to the two of you and to Salesforce for hosting me at Dreamforce. It was a pleasure. Hope to be there again next year. Talk to you guys soon. Take care.